Welcome to Unlayered, the show where we explore next generation blockchains. I'm your host, Dave, and I'm joined by my standing co-host today, Mr. Zen Llama, who works in DevRel at Monad Labs. And today should be a fun one. We're joined by Marbius from Moonwalk Fitness to discuss the game which has taken the Solana community by storm, meshing fitness with crypto and gambling. So I can't wait to get into it. But first, Marbius, how are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk today.
Awesome. And perhaps best place to start, if you can just give us an overview of how you got into crypto and eventually into the weeds of Solana.
Yeah, my initial intro, or I guess my full-time transition into crypto was in 2021, kind of right in the craze of the initial Solana run-up. I've been pretty Solana focused for quite some time now. Worked in a handful of things throughout the Solana ecosystem, really focused a lot of my efforts for about a year, primarily doing research, and then eventually shifting over into product and growth work. I spent about a year being a pretty core contributor to the Bonk ecosystem before I transitioned full-time to working on Moonwalk in January.
Awesome. And so Moonwalk, obviously, that's what we're largely here to talk about today. Perhaps best if you can start by just giving us an overview of how the game works.
Yeah, so Moonwalk is a way to provide players and users with a level of social and financial accountability. Basically, the way Moonwalk works in current state is you get together with a group of friends, you wager an amount of crypto, whether that is USDC, Sol, or Bonk. Those are the three currencies we offer right now. You set a daily step target and a game duration, and you connect to a fitness provider, ranging from anything from a Fitbit, Apple Watch, Google Fit, Apple Health, and you begin walking. So it tracks your steps. If you hit your step goal, you maintain your deposit and you get it returned at the end of the game. If you miss your steps, you are paying out to your friends basically for the amount of days that you missed in a proportional fashion. So really cool way for you to kind of give yourself another layer of social accountability. And like I said, this is just V1. We're really planning on expanding the game quite a bit more.
So I think what's pretty cool about like Moonwalk is kind of how simple it is, right? And because it's so simple, it seems to work, like versus like a step in had all these mechanics, right? There was like a big run up, and then people just sort of like, okay, well, I'm not farming anymore, so why do I use this? So maybe you could talk about like where the idea came from and like why it's so I think like it's actually pretty unique that it's so narrow banded, and that makes it like something people want to use. So maybe talk about the thesis behind that.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that you say that because this is the first thing out of the variety of things that I've worked on in crypto where I've been able to tell like friends and family, and they not only immediately understand it, but they're instantly gravitated towards it. And don't get me wrong, I love like DeFi and those kind of things. Like no hate on those, they have their own place, but they're a little bit harder to explain to the average user who doesn't really understand the entire inner workings of crypto. And so that's why it's really cool to work on something where I feel like you can actually bring in a lot of consumers outside of the traditional realm of people that we interact with probably. But yeah, so Moonwalk was largely spawned out of the bear. It seemed like people, the only way to kind of stay sane during a lot of chaotic times were by focusing on fitness. And so kind of the key way that this game spawned was actually out of a group chat from our founder, KW, who he and a group of friends put a CryptoPunk on the line to see who could lose the most body fat. And so they each got a DEXA scan in incremental periods, like went to an official place and all posted their DEXA scans in the chat. And they started just really transforming their lives. Like a bunch of people just really changed their health. KW lost a bunch of weight. He lost a ton of body fat, and he really contributes to that financial accountability being one of the biggest things that kickstarted his fitness journey from just kind of being not in great shape to just really, really getting things together on that front. And then he also said that he noticed by getting this group together and having such a pretty large financial risk on the line that they also created a really close friendship. And so as things started to pick up in the market, he really wanted to figure out a way to productize that natural behavior that they were seeing in those chats. And so that's kind of what spawned a Moonwalk was what's the easiest thing that we can track that most people tend to track, and then how can we really try to strap something sustainable onto this that doesn't necessarily rely on a token that can just kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah, and if I think about accountability and exercise at the moment, there's a few ways you can sort of go about it, but I think the most obvious one is it's New Year's Eve, and then you go and sign up for a gym membership for the next year. So you're going to be spending 30, 50, $100 a month, and therefore you feel like you're accountable. But it's still not quite as good, is it? Because this way you can actually earn money for doing the exercise, and also you're, by the nature of the game, doing it in collaboration with loads of other people. So I think there's like massive additional drivers there. Maybe the other one would be like signing up for a marathon or something like that with friends. But again, you're not standing to like gain any money from doing it, and you can run a marathon slow and all these sorts of things. So I think it's like a really interesting, novel way to really incentivize fitness. Is that how you see it? And I
Yeah,
don't know, what's the uptake been like so
I
far?
mean, totally. There's a lot of different ways to try to add a layer of financial accountability. Unfortunately, the reasons gyms do work is because there are a pretty big portion of the population that don't use their gym membership. And yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, if you were able to get your friends to sign up for a marathon, that would be an awesome way to hold each other accountable too, and it would be a pretty fun and engaging experience. But I think the hard part about that is there's such a huge layer of commitment. The cool part about
Mhm.
Moonwalk is that you can set a week game or a month-long game, or you can set a pretty short step limit. Like, it doesn't have to be a 10K game. I mean, I'll
Mhm.
jump into more of the games that we've had recently, but we had one that was 30,000 steps a day. So, um, it's a pretty approachable game because any fitness level you can really participate and play. And yeah, I think you do bring a good point where it's like you can also earn a little bit of money, especially from your friends. I think people love to wager on different metrics, especially competitive people, which you tend to see in the crypto ecosystem. They really love the idea of being able to battle each other one on one, and I think that's a really fun dynamic there. There's actually a really interesting example of a way for financial accountability that actually sparked my interest with this sort of realm before even jumping into Moonwalk. It's from a pretty popular book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. There's an interesting example in the book where this guy makes just a personal contract with his wife and his trainer that anytime he misses a training session or misses a certain days a week at the gym, he owes each of them $200. And he said his level of adherence went up a ton. And to me, that really triggered my interest, especially when KW approached me with this idea to come on and really take a hold of the product here. I was like, oh, I wonder if this will actually work. And we've seen a pretty crazy amount of adherence in the games, even if it's a small monetary amount on the line. I mean, I don't think I've seen a game under 90% other than a 1 month long game where a bunch of people hit 29 out of 30 days. But yeah, I mean, it's really cool to see. And it's a really interesting way to provide those rails for social accountability and financial accountability.
So I mean, maybe we can dive into some of these more interesting games and like talk about a little bit of the feedback you've been getting from like early users.
Yeah, so Moonwalk in current state, we haven't allowed for users to actually create their own games. So I guess the initial explanation I gave isn't entirely correct in current state. You can't just instantly create a game right now. We're really trying to gate the growth just because, I mean, we're fortunate enough to have seen such a huge demand so far that we really want to wait until the product is fully ready and debugged as much as possible before we just let it hit the ground and grow naturally, which we really hope and expect it to. But we've been able to gather a bunch of early beta testers from different groups from within, particularly the crypto ecosystem right now, which is our current target audience. Because as much as we want to make this experience fully obfuscated and really easy with payment rails, it's just not quite there yet and not entirely our focus. So we want to make sure that at least our early users understand how to use a crypto wallet and how to at least get funds on chain, which to, I guess, primarily like crypto users, that doesn't sound like a big feat, but to like your parents, that might be a little bit more challenging. And so, yeah, we've been able to test in a bunch of different realms, ranging from NFT communities or just close friends. And the level of participation has been really awesome. I mean, the people that are already into fitness love it because they can compete with each other on the leaderboard and really try to, I don't know, I guess prove their level of commitment to the idea of I want to compete with each other financially and in these big step games. But we've also seen a lot of people that aren't primarily into fitness almost start to change their lives already. One of our key moderators in our Discord that helps us support tickets, he DM'd me recently, said he's already lost 25 pounds and Moonwalk's only been out for like 8 weeks. So that was a really cool thing to see. As far as like games so far that have been particularly interesting as a case study, I would say there's probably been 3 that I could call out. So the first time we actually decided to use Bonk as like a social connection of this, which Bonk was kind of one of the things that really made this app possible. They helped get us off the ground running. We said we were going to do a Bonk community camp, first come, first serve, up to 100 people, and our website got 15,000 hits in like 12 seconds, and just kind of broke our site because we were not ready for that at the time. So that was really cool to see a bunch of people wanting to participate in a fitness game, especially when the yield is only coming from other players. So obviously they're not going to be as outsized as maybe some other examples that you might see. So that was a really cool one to see. And out of the people that actually got into the game, we saw like a 97% adherence rate. So over a 7-day game, like 97 people out of 100 hit 10,000 steps. And the really cool part is we were able to see their previous steps that they were like getting on their fitness tracker if they allowed us permission, and most of them were around like 3,000 to 4,000. So instantly, we already saw not only a like super big boost in our app participation, but also in their own day-to-day lives. They're really getting out and getting more fit, and that was super cool to see. And then another game that was really awesome was one that took place last week. I think 8 people put 100 soul on the line to walk 30,000 steps a day. And so that's a pretty crazy feat. I'm pretty sure that's around like 18 miles, 17 miles. So that's like 4 to 5 or 5 to 6 hours of walking for like the average stride. And so that's a pretty bold game to participate in. But I think 7 out of the 8 people hit every single day. And then one person missed it by around 1,000 steps. So that was probably pretty brutal, but really cool to see that game. And then another one was one of our longer games we've done, which was a 10 soul entry. And that was 30 days, like the one I mentioned previously, and only one person hit the full daily goal. And the cool part about this is the 29 people only lost, I think it was around 30 people or so. They only lost like 29/30ths of their deposit. So a really small financial hit to them, but the person that won the game, they deposited 10 soul and they got like 31 soul back. So a really cool way to, I guess, generate a sort of yield off of just joint accountability, and that with no supplement on top of the pot other than the other users. So those are probably
is the yield
3 coolest.
Yeah, maybe a quick clarifying question here. The yield that you get per day, is that split? Like if someone doesn't hit it on the day, is it split over all the people who hit it on that day, or is it split over all the people who hit it like over the course of the whole game? Like how does
so not to create too much confusion, but I guess there's kind of a clarification to make on the game mechanics. So say there's a 10-day long game and you miss the first day, but then you hit the other 9 days, you're only going to lose 10% of your deposit because it's proportional daily. And this doesn't settle until the end of the week. So it's not like, okay, say you and I are playing in a game, and I miss today and you don't, you get my money instantly. There's still the chance that you'll fail and it settles at the end of the game. So say everyone else in the game also misses 1 day, then I guess the new floor, the new like bar to hit is just keep track with your on pace with your group. And so if everyone hits 9 out of 10 days, then everyone gets their deposit back. But if everyone but one person hits 9 days and one person hits 8, they'll lose like I guess whatever the new conversion rate would be to losing 8/9 of your deposit there.
Okay, so it is total over the whole game, and basically, like the person with the most days gets the most payouts.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And the cool part about it too is that you can compete and do more steps. So, I mean, in a bunch of the early games, we were kind of using 10,000 steps as our baseline because, based off of research, that seems to be like a really good metric for you to try to hit daily.
Mm-hmm.
But you saw some more of our power users, especially the really fitness-oriented ones who are already big runners and big athletes, trying to compete on the leaderboard, hitting 30,000 steps a day. So they were able to have their own like vanity competition, call it, where they were just trying to climb up the leaderboard and see their name go up on the ranking, but still be able to compete against someone like myself who would not be wanting to go get 30,000 steps a day consistently.
Can you open it up to the general public in terms of the individual games, or does it need to be people that you trust? I'm thinking mainly about gamifying, trying to cheat the system, basically?
Yeah,
Can you open it up so you've got like a million people playing a game?
Yeah, we're really working through those options right now. The biggest thing we want to do is to try to create games within friend groups, but another
Mhm.
key component is trying to allow you to meet new people while you're playing. I think that's one of the key components and one of the things that interested me the most, especially as I got hands-on with the product and started doing some research to back what we were really trying to productize is behavior. And an interesting symptom that came out of it was noticing how much, particularly male loneliness, was on the rise. I mean, over the last
Mhm.
decade, it's just been climbing, and I think it's because people are having a hard time creating meaningful connections and finding platforms and places to actually connect with people over things that are positive in their life. And so we really want to make sure that we're not only adding the level of financial accountability, but we're also really trying to connect people with different groups. And so we're working through a bunch of ways to either connect people based off of interests or like geolocation if they want to opt in. Obviously, crypto is a little bit more interesting on that front, but yeah, I mean, I guess to answer your question, we could do games that are up to 1 million people, but I think a big component of this is trust. And
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
don't really want to just be playing with a bunch of strangers because no matter what we do, people will probably find a way to try to cheat the
Mhm.
system. I mean, whether it's creating a really sophisticated way to simulate heart rate while you're like shaking a watch. I mean, I don't want to go promote people to like try to cheat the system because at the end of the day, you're cheating yourself. And that's kind of the big thing we want to push back on is that, yeah, you can try to cheat, but what are you really gaining out of that? Like, we really are trying to push this emphasis of fitness over finance. And so if you want to try to join a fitness accountability game and cheat, it seems like you're gonna end up just cheating yourself.
And also the fact that you don't necessarily earn any money, even if you do all of the activities. So it's different to Bonk, where it was a case of if you walk, you earn money, and then that obviously massively incentivizes people to cheat. Here, it's like if you do all the walking and everyone else does all the walking, no one gets any money. So hopefully, it will be a slight deterrent from people to
Yeah, exactly.
take the
And
piss.
we're really trying to come up with fun ways to engage the overall community because I think it would be really fun eventually to do games up to like 100,000 people where you're really just competing on a global leaderboard, whether that's a game that everyone's competing on the same level or it's adjusted based off of your health metrics that you already previously have, or whether we push people into like different tiers or leagues based off of their fitness journey so far and allow them to compete against other people with similar health. There's a lot of ways that we could really expand that to be engaging on a larger scale, but also allowing you to connect with people like similar to you and still form those connections. And one of the big takeaways I've noticed in our early beta testing groups is that not only have there been a lot of repeat users who join a game and really want to join more games, but we allow you to like link a Telegram group on the main page of your like game, and you're seeing a bunch of people really start to chat and talk to each other. I've already made like quite a few close connections of people I had no idea who they were going into this, and now we all chat in a group chat every day. It's kind of similar to the experience that spawned Moonwalk in the first place.
Nice. So,
Can I just pitch one of my
oh, go for it.
ideas
Please,
quickly
I always love to
for
hear
a
it
type of
because
game?
people love to. They always have their brain moving in these conversations. I feel like it's a
I
fun
think
thing to see.
I think like a last man standing, either with the same every day, but you could increase it every single day, the amount of steps that you have to
Totally.
do by like 2,000, 5,000 steps every day until there's only one person left who gets all the money. I think
Yeah.
that'd be cool.
So I guess going back to the fact that this is V1, not only are we trying to expand out into different sort of health metrics, whether it's your sleep, or your resting heart rate, or your HRV. There's also, I think, a lot of different game dynamics that you can make similar like this last man standing that could be really engaging. And so right now we're calling our game version collaborative. So you're getting together with people and you're trying to hold each other accountable. But I think a really good product fit, especially for the crypto communities who are a little bit more degenerates, would really
Yeah.
love these dynamic game modes, whether it is knockout style where like you have to hit the threshold or you lose your whole deposit if you miss a day, or the last man standing where you kind of keep going on the steps keep scaling up until one person's remaining or a podium's remaining, or almost like the biggest loser show back in the day where there's like the red bar you had to stay above, and if you fall below the red bar you're knocked out.
Uh,
And I think those would be really fun games, and they would also generate a bunch of yield, especially if you're playing on a larger scale. I mean, if you're playing with 100 people and you have a knockout style game, everyone does a one soul entry, that could get really competitive really quickly. So that's one of the earlier things that I really want to try to expand into in the next little while is take our earlier beta testers and really try to see, hey, how would you guys like a game that is much more like strictly competitive versus like trying to uplift each other. And I don't want that to be something that turns chaotic. And that's especially one of the reasons that we have this being like a step goal, not just like a who can hit the highest cap, because for a lot of people they will go out and try to walk 40,000 steps a day to knock out someone that does a bunch of marathons, but they might end up hurting themselves or blowing their knee out. And so I mean, health is the biggest ethos here, not how hard can you push yourself and hurt yourself to try to earn some money.
So how are you thinking about that as far as like go to market to make sure, like people do things that are reasonable, right? And you don't end up in a situation where like people are like over competing, right?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that I'm trying to design right now is most people either have a fitness wearable or at least keep their phone in their pocket most of the day. And so whether or not they know it, they've been tracking their step goals or their steps for a long time or their fitness. And so especially for steps, it's a pretty easy way to you can backlog, say, their last 6 weeks of
Mm.
step data. And so say you, Kevin, you're someone that gets 4,000 steps a day. We might make a metric where you have like a personal goal outside of games that we're helping you track, and you can like earn rewards for just, I mean, we're going to make an experience point system that kind of feels like a really fun, engaging game where you level up and progress even if you're not participating in a game. And so for your example, it could be, okay, your daily goal is going to be 4,000 steps. You're going to have 2 days a week where you try to hit 9,000 steps or like 8,500 steps. And then you have a rest day and then like another one that's like a 6,000 steps. So being able to create individual metrics and then giving you suggested games to join based off of those metrics, I think is a really good, broader go to market strategy because it helps you understand where you are. And then also, say you have this baseline in a mobile game, say like a pretty popular mobile game, whether it's like Clash of Clans or one of those like really popular ones that people have really tried to progress through. You watch your base, your profile progress. I think it'd be a really fun thing to bring into a fitness game like this, where you can really watch yourself progress through the app, and you're not just leveling up some arbitrary thing, but you're actually physically getting healthier and physically pushing yourself more and seeing your personal progress and seeing how much that progresses you through the app.
So you could do something where like, it looks at their step history and then it doesn't let you go over like 50% of your, rolling average just to make sure that like
Exactly.
someone's not
Yeah.
joining a game with like 40,000 steps and they've only ever done like 4,000.
Exactly. And we're gonna work more with like professional trainers and physical therapists to find out exactly what those
Mm.
metrics are, especially when we do decide to push something like that to market. But yeah, we with this XP system, and I guess I haven't really jumped into that too much, but it's something that I find to be a really interesting and core component of the game, especially on a personal like fitness level. I don't want you to be able to earn XP outside of that call it 50% above your average threshold. Like you don't want it to be something where if you walk 100,000 steps a day, you'll earn 100,000 XP, right? I want it to be very
Mm.
personalized to the user, so they really feel like they're pushing themselves and challenging themselves within the application. And I think that also disincentivizes cheating. I think if you are someone that comes in and sees, oh, I can level up through this game if I just figure out a way to cheat the system, I think that is promoting that sort of behavior if you have it be uncapped and just let it run wild without actually taking the own users' fitness level into account.
I often thought about it with Stepin, but given all of the obvious health benefits, do you think that there would be opportunities to work with some of the big running brands, Nike, Adidas, things like that, and also insurance companies, governments who want their citizens to be doing exercise every day? Yeah, do you see this sort of branching into those areas, maybe bringing in advertising income and, I don't know, somehow sharing that with the users as well?
Totally. I think there's a bunch of opportunities to expand into like other brands and companies. So I guess you mentioned a couple, so I'll kind of go over each of those. I think like co-branding, whether it's with a fitness wearable or with running shoes or with just fitness brands in general, whether you're working towards discount codes or whether they're willing to sponsor a game to compete for different prizes. I mean, one of the examples we've already seen with advertising like that is we did um, I think it was it was a 4-day game for the two different crypto events out in Dubai. So there was Token 2049 and Dubai Hacker House. We worked together with sponsors from Flexland, All Domains, and Bonk. They added money on top of the pot for anyone that was actually participating in Dubai. So we would take people's time zone data, which is provided from Google Fit. And so if you're actually at these conferences, you were able to not only compete for the pot size, but also this additional bonus of $7,000. And so unfortunately in Dubai, there was quite a ungodly storm that hit. So the adherence level went down for people in Dubai, but I think 8 people ended up hitting the step goal out of like, I think it was like 150 people total that were playing. So anyone around the world was able to participate. All the people that actually hit their goal, I think it was 10,000 steps and like, I think give or take $50 entry. They were all able to make, I think around like a 20% yield over the game duration. But then the people that actually did it in Dubai, each of them made like $900 on top of that. And so that was really awesome because the users were able to see a huge financial incentive for actually being at the in-person event and going to this activation. And then I think it was also a good branding opportunity for these sponsors because we were able to utilize our relationship with Bonk to help give them extra publicity and advertise them on our main page, on our social media. I think that was a really small scale example of what could branch out further. So that's kind of the advertising and branding angles. I think there's a really good opportunity for big companies to try to push their brand within a game where they notice people are hopefully participating to increase their fitness. You mentioned insurance, and that's actually a really interesting angle that we've talked about. Getting into insurance is a little bit more tricky because I'm not sure like legality around, say, you can get discounted insurance, like health insurance, if you're actively improving your health or showing that you're hitting a certain health and step threshold. But I think one thing that would be really cool is doing like an employee benefits program, especially within a bunch of these crypto communities. I think there's the trend for engineers, especially, to push really hard and long hours and not actually emphasize their health. So it could be really cool for companies to almost do a sponsor pot the same way that we're seeing in these like sponsored games where they say, hey, we can pay for your entry and you can almost work to earn this employee bonus. Like each month you get $1,000 if you actually hit the step threshold for each of these days. You're working towards this money. And we actually have a mechanism for that. Like that's called like a game credit where you can basically pay someone's entry, but they don't just get that money and deposit it. It actually is just earned within the game. So I think there could be a lot of ways to extrapolate that and like, okay, like that'd be a really, you see a lot of companies giving their employees just like a stipend to go spend on a membership somewhere or to spend it on exercise equipment. But I guess the issue there is you don't necessarily know they're actually spending it on that unless you're going through and actually checking like receipts and those sort of things and doing reimbursements. But I also think it's a good way to engage your company together and kind of solidify a social component outside of just working. So I think there's a really interesting opportunity there.
I guess you know, it hits me that like, you know, there's a lot of apps in crypto and like very few of them have this kind of like visceral, I get it, right? And you've been in
Totally.
crypto for a while. And so I'm wondering like how does it feel to like be working on an app where like you can explain to people like what it is. It's like really easy for people to get it. And maybe if you have any advice about like, you know, for developers who are looking at creating apps like this, like maybe what they could think about, you know, in crypto to maybe come upon, you know, similar ideas. Like, you know, Helium's another one where, you know, I can go and explain this to my father and he's like, oh, wow, like I get this, you know, I can use it. I see it on my phone every day. And so, yeah, just wondering about like how that feels after like, you know, I know a lot of people have like this like apathy toward crypto after working in the industry for so long. And they're like, oh, like nothing's good, but except for gambling and meme coins. Right.
Yeah.
And so maybe you could just talk about like your personal journey through that and then, you know, stumbling onto Moonwalk and maybe leaving us with some advice if you have any.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think one of the hardest things within crypto, especially if you have to kind of be in the space for a long time to, I think, find a really good way to build a product, right? I mean, I think it's very non-approachable for someone to jump right in and be like, I want to build this product because it's really hard to get a proper team together. It's hard to do fundraising. It's hard to actually find what that PMS could be for that. And so I think the advice that I would give is just to really try to notice things that are naturally happening. I mean, that's kind of how Moonwalk spawned, right? It was from this group chat of people that were already doing a certain behavior. So I guess being really cognizant of what are the things you really enjoy doing already, and then trying to find something within that realm where crypto actually makes a lot of sense to strap onto it versus it being an afterthought. I mean, one of the really cool parts about Moonwalk is it is truly one of those things that's only possible on Solana particularly, but really accessible with crypto, primarily because of the payment rails that we offer. I mean, since we are utilizing the Solana blockchain as our like pseudo custody, we're not actually managing users' funds. So it really eliminates a bunch of the key risks that we have with having to KYC users or go through a bunch of different complications with traditional like fiat rails. And it allowed us to also make games international. There's been similar competitors that have tried to do like somewhat similar things where they add some sort of financial competition layer incentive mechanism on top of hitting fitness goals, but a lot of those had trouble scaling because they're either only US based or you have to go through this a little bit of complication of using a credit card or like figuring out how to like connect a plaid for your bank account. And I think using crypto, especially if we can figure out, and we have a method of being able to make payment rails really seamlessly on and off, it allowed us to actually build this app not only with crypto as the afterthought, like I was saying, but as like a primary focus and primary mechanism for making it possible. But I mean, that could be a primarily like unique case. I think for a lot of people, I don't know, just trying to figure out like a unique realm that hasn't really been tapped and figuring out how you can actually utilize crypto to make it possible. I mean, for a long time, crypto just simply wasn't sophisticated enough to actually be able to create real world products that could be explained simply and actually have big user growth. I mean, I think if it was an obvious thing, a lot of people would have done it by now. And I'm not saying we've achieved that yet by any means. I mean, our user metrics are still quite low, but I think we have the potential to be able to scale into a big, like, real world application. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess zooming out to advice, it's a pretty challenging thing to give, especially because it's just so unique from time to time. But yeah, I guess I would just really focus on what are you noticing happening in group chats that you're in or things that you're trying to like accomplish in your day-to-day life, and how can you figure out how to utilize crypto to really be an advantage for you.
Yeah, I think that's actually really good advice is that, like, there are emergent behaviors that just come from being in crypto communities. And if we can somehow tap into those, because at the end of the day, these networks are actually just like social coordination networks. That's what DAOs are doing, and we've seen some unique mechanisms around that with just seeing the futurarchy.
Totally.
And I think people are just basically, looking at these emergent behaviors and kind of coming upon new things. So it's a pretty exciting time to be in the industry, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think memes aside, we actually have spent enough time really focusing on infrastructure to really make things possible. Um, I would just be weary if you're a team trying to come in and slightly change the wheel, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with slightly trying to improve an NFT platform, but I think your market's still going to be constrained to the people that are already using NFT markets. I think the biggest advantage would be how can I actually onboard people and be able to explain something in a one sentence line that would actually get someone captivated enough to try this app. That does also take away the scary part of using crypto that most people have.
I think there's an argument that you've done something else as well, which is crucial to your success, which is, I mean, Steppen, of course, was the first project to introduce crypto and sport and walking. And actually, fundamentally, it's quite similar. I think you had to pay for shoes. So you had to, your equivalent would be putting down a deposit. And then in return, you receive their native token for walking. So it's a very similar concept to what you had. But the difference is that it doesn't enforce sustainability because you can just have loads and loads of people earning the tokens and not enough deposits going down. And perhaps the reason for all of that is because they've tried to put a token into the middle of all of this, where they're the central issuer. Whereas for you, you're saying, no, we want this to be 100% sustainable. So all of the money which you can earn must come from people who have made those initial deposits. We're not going to have some like central arbiter who's then giving out tokens on a certain curve, and then inevitably it all comes crashing down during the bear market. So I think sort of not having a token in the center of all of this and allowing it to be sustainable and deposits payouts, I think is sort of genius, and why I think this really has got legs, even if we experience, the bear market in a couple of years.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points there. the first thing I want to say is yes, I think if you've been in crypto long enough, the first comparison in your mind you're going to make is, oh, it's kind of like Stephen, but with different components. And we definitely never want to be in a situation where like, oh, we're better than Stephen for these reasons because one, I think we're fundamentally different, and I'll kind of jump into why. But I think Stephen is also just like a really interesting experiment, and they did super well for the product the product market, and like also just like the product type they were going after. And so would never want to just come in here and talk poorly on Stephen because I enjoyed Stephen. I think they were a really interesting application. But yeah, I think you bring up a good point where we were able to make something that was really cool that doesn't necessarily rely on a token, right? And that doesn't mean that there couldn't be interesting applications for building a token around this product at some point, but I think that having it be really sustainable without one is a really cool thing that I think is uncommon in crypto. Um, but yeah, I mean, we're like I said, we're not really trying to reinvent STEPN, right? We're really trying to, I think you could almost view this as adding a financial layer to something like Strava. And it feels probably very STEPN-esque right now because it's just steps. But like I said, we're trying to expand not only to other fitness metrics, but also expanding into different types of like fitness activities. So biking, running, swimming, these are all things we can easily track using fitness wearables that can have a similar level of like basically taking the same baseline game mechanics and putting it onto something fundamentally different than just walking to earn your deposit back. I think as awesome of an activity as walking is, I think for some users that are a little bit more, I don't know, maybe call it seasoned athletes, they might want to expand that a little bit more. And I think another key component, which is actually what I remembered what I was talking about earlier, is that there's a really interesting product or interesting market that's kind of being untapped right now, which is traditional fitness KOLs. We've spoken with quite a few people who come from like a traditional fitness influencer industry. I've worked with a lot of these people, and I was shocked by the amount of them that aren't able to monetize their audience besides just through the platform they're pushing their content through. So like if they're on Instagram or TikTok, they might have massive followings, but their monetization is actually pretty low. And so one of the things that we've thought about would be really cool is, okay, could I tap into one of these big influencers that, I mean, primarily women follow? So like my girlfriend or like my parents or someone like that, or my sisters, they love like these influencers. They'll buy their programs if they have them, but to get to that level is so hard. I think it'd be really cool to be able to let them come on and create a holistic fitness program. So whether you're like a yoga influencer and you want to do, okay, get 7.5 hours of sleep, do this much headspace, and then do a like HIIT training on your watch and go through and do that. And if you do this, you're able to engage within my community almost like a gated chat, or you're able to just like keep participating in my program. I think that could be a really interesting thing to expand into and really allow them to tap into their audiences and also onboard quite a few people onto our platform just from simply allowing them to connect with their fitness influencers or their key fitness people they look up to in a way they haven't been able to before.
So, like, I'm just like constantly impressed by like how many avenues this can like take, right? So I guess like maybe to talk through some of those, like if you were to add other sports, like what's the complexity there, right? Like how like why is it limited to steps right now, and how are you thinking about like adding, say if I wanted to do swimming or any of that?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and kind of one we've been asked a good amount once we do bring up this idea of really expanding our activity level. Basically anything that you can see on any app right now is something that we can pretty easily track. So like all these things are fundamentally reliant on a fitness wearable, right? And so that is going to be a big barrier to entry, especially for a lot of our global users. I think is getting that fitness wearable, but there's plenty of things that you can still track simply by keeping your phone in your pocket. So like running, I'm pretty sure HIIT training, yoga, those are all things you can just strap your phone into your like thigh and track on Apple Health or Google Fit. I think Google Fit offers a lot of the same things, but most of these are based off of the gyroscope on your wearable or on your phone. And so things like swimming, Apple Watch has a feature where you just go into activity, you click swimming and you go, but they don't gate this metric simply to just be for their apps. Like you see that you can go do cycling or swimming on Strava. You can do how many ski runs or how many calories you burned skiing throughout the day on slopes or on Strava as well. So there's a bunch of different ways that we could take this, and all we more or less have to do is utilize the core infrastructure of the actual phone. and the actual wearable itself. So the complexity of it isn't actually too challenging to gain that data. It's, I would say, a little bit more complicated when we get into what are the metrics we want to track. Like swimming is obviously laps, or cycling could be obviously distance, but there's plenty of people that do weight training. Like, how do you want to push people to better that goal outside of just time spent? Because you really want to focus on other things besides just time spent at the gym, right? You want to make sure you're getting stronger, you're getting healthier, you're actually following proper programs. And so those are things that are going to require more thought. The reason we're really emphasizing on step, because if you, I don't know, I guess you take that statement right there, you might be like, oh, why would you not just do all that right now? We're really trying to nail steps right now. So we're really trying to make sure that the core functionalities of the game are really good. The game isn't breaking. The game is functioning and scaling very well. And so once we have steps very properly dialed in, it'll allow us to very quickly expand into these other categories using the same core fundamentals of the game.
Nice. Well, I'm excited to try it. Like, is there a wait list, or like how do people get involved if they're interested?
Yeah, I guess that's a good question.
Yeah.
Probably should have gone over a little bit earlier. So we have a new thing that we started last week. That's a weekly recurring game. So we have, I think we're actually doing 6 games this week. Last week it was 4 games. So there was a 7,000 step goal and a 10,000 step goal with 2 different buy-ins for each one. So it was 7,000 steps at a half a soul buy-in, and then 7,000 steps at a 5 soul buy-in, and then similarly to the 10,000 step goal. This week we're also adding 2 with Bonk as the core currency, so it'll be 7,000 and 10,000 as well. And we're doing, I think, a like $10 to $20 buy-in on the base one, and then maybe like a $200 to $300 equivalent buy-in on the upper tier of that. So people can participate. As far as allowing users to create their own games, one of the big things that we're trying to roll out right now, which is actively in development, is our mobile app. We've had the primary source of our support tickets be through Apple users using Google Fit. And so I guess one complication with Apple is they are very secure with their data. And so the only way to actually access someone's step data, even on like any sort of their health data or any of the different fitness data they're providing through Apple Health, is to have an iOS application. And so if you have an iOS app, you're able to just instantly give permissions to Apple Health, and whatever the limitations of that are up to you. But yeah, once you have that, then it's really easy, but you can't pull it externally. So we're really pushing out a mobile app that will serve as its own step provider in primary, and then expand into a bunch of different capabilities later on. I mean, I see this being a mobile application first, because I think that's where a majority of these fitness things happen. I don't think you're going to be wanting to log in on your desktop to track your steps every day. And so, yeah, we're really pushing this mobile application pretty hard, because I think once we have that, we're able to pull raw data from Apple Health and make sure that what you're seeing on your Apple Health matches your iOS app. That'll be a really easy spot for us to hit the ground running and say, okay, go ahead and create all your games. And so that's probably one of the biggest things right now that we're stopping from allowing users to just jump in freely. But yeah, there's plenty of opportunities for users to engage, whether if they want to join our Discord or our Telegram. People are always posting games in there that we've facilitated, just to make sure that we have a grip on support and are able to troubleshoot any issues they have, or through these weekly recurring games, which we tweet and post in both those channels as well.
So if people want to get involved, they just go to moonwalk.fit. Is that it? Or
yep, basically. I would check our
Okay.
Twitter. We're working on creating a public game feed right now where in these community games that we allow people to create or that we're creating, you can publish it to the main site where anyone that has visibility can go join it, instead of it being, I guess, call it private. We're also working on expanding into like more like SPL and NFT communities. So whether it's using something similar to Matrica or just verifying your ownership of a token, you can participate in gated games. We're really trying to push bigger NFT communities to provide incentives on top of the traditional game pot, similar to a sponsored game style, to really get their community up and moving, and then will allow them to gate access to this based off ownership. So look out for a lot of different ways to do that, I would say, if you're a user, on top of the traditional rolling games that we have.
And how are you financing everything? Are you taking a cut from all of the games? Are you seeking VC funding? Have you already received some? How are you going to be funding all of this?
Yeah, so we are getting pretty close to finishing our seed round right now as far as funding goes. I can't disclose any of the terms to that, but that is the primary way that we are trying to build this right now. Bonk allowed us to bootstrap our way from the beginning, so that's been really awesome to have their community support, allowing us to build this application out. We're not taking any fees right now. That could change in the future, but it would be in a very non-destructive way for the end user.
So I think one thing that's like pretty cool is that like in a lot of like accountability apps in Web 2, you can like opt out like once you say you want to do it, right? So like with the screen time thing on Apple, right? Even though you can set like a screen time goal, when it comes up and says like you're out of time, like you can just be like cancel, don't worry about it.
Yep.
With the blockchain, like once you put this money up, like it's gone. You know
That's
what I
really
mean?
cool
It's in
part of
this
it.
pool. You can't like renege on your promise to like participate in this game. And so I think that's just like a really cool mechanic here that like
Yeah.
blockchains enable very specifically, right?
It's
Huh.
definitely immutable accountability, and that's another really interesting thing that blockchain enables is that since we have no custody over user funds, like we really can't be like, oh yeah, you're right, like you can opt out. Like if you're participating in this game, like you alone have full control over your deposit. Like we'll provide you with the rails, we'll provide you with all the support to debug your step trackers or help you out how we can, but at the end of the day, that's still your money that you're custodying via smart contract. And so it's a really interesting thing that, like you said, you can't see in Web 2. So it is something that's truly only possible using crypto.
Could you do it for screen time?
Yeah, that's one of the things I really want to do. Like you see a lot of people in their fitness journey, they'll start tracking steps and then really expand into not quite Brian Johnson levels, but really trying to get a lot more holistic. And I guess huge components of that and my personal journey with health have been sleep and screen time. And so whether it's making sure you're not having screen time after certain hours or trying to reduce your screen time or making sure you're getting enough time in bed, those are all easy trackable metrics. I mean, sky's really the limit of things that you can provide accountability on. And that's why outside of just we're a step game, I really want it to be more so we are a healthy habit formation game through fitness accountability and social accountability.
And is fitness sort of a central part of your life? Has that been a driving force behind the whole project?
Totally, yeah, and that's why I was so interested to join the team. And actually, even before I was a part of the team, when I first heard the idea, I would actively just kind of chat with the engineers about it because I thought it was just so interesting. And fitness is a huge part of my life. I mean, I've been a big athlete throughout all of like high school and college, and then even after college, I still actively participate in like tennis and a bunch of different, I guess, just overall fitness things. And then I think that's actually been a pretty core thing for all of our team members so far. I mean, one of our founders was a collegiate swimmer and water polo player. Another founder was a huge boxer growing up. Another founder was a big weight trainer. And so all of us, fitness has been really fundamental for us. And I think that's a pretty core driver for this is not only do we want to see a really cool crypto application that could, I mean, from like the crypto aspect of it, like really bring something that's approachable for users and gives crypto a little bit of meaning outside of just the fun games and the fun things that we do on chain all the time, but also something that we all really believe in the ethos of, which is getting people healthier, almost tricking them into getting healthy. If you want to, I guess, call it a little bit more a spade is like, we're really trying to convince people like, yes, you can protect money and also maybe earn some money out of this. But also at the end of the day, to do so, you have to get fit. And I think fitness is a really hard journey for some people to start. And I think this could be a really good way for them to actually get on top of that. I mean, if you look at even just walking, I think every 1,000 steps you take on top of like a day, like additional 1,000 steps reduces your blood pressure by like a pretty big portion. If you hit, I think the metric is a 30-minute brisk walk. So that's around like 7,000 steps. Or like 6,000 steps, it reduces your chance of a cardiovascular event by 32%. Cardiovascular events account for 1/3 of the deaths in the US a year. So I mean, fitness is a huge crisis we're having. You have obesity rising, and not only on top of like the physical health stuff, on top of that, there's all the mental health components of it. I mean, if you really get outside and walk for a while, even outside of any of the other complicated fitness activities that you probably see on social media that are really intimidating, like simply just getting out and walking around your neighborhood is just tremendously beneficial for your mental health because of the physical aspects of it, like the endorphins that it releases. And so tricking people into getting healthy and just also showing them there's a way to do so that's very approachable, that they are going to be very hard accountable for, I think it's something that I'm very passionate about, and as well as the rest of the team.
Have you thought about like maybe games tailored for, I know my like grandma and grandpa used to like walk every day, right?
Yep.
And obviously they like not doing anywhere near 10,000 steps, but it was very much just to like get them active. So I guess I'm wondering, like, have you thought about any like, targeting the older demographic, and like how I guess things would have to change, in that scenario. Like I know that like
No,
you'd
totally.
have to reduce the step goal, but like also, there's considerations about like when they're walking, because they're maybe not as coordinated or all that stuff. So
I laugh because when we are pitching this product, especially in fundraising calls, everyone's like, "Oh, what's your end goal for users?" And we jokingly will usually respond with like, "We want to get the mom's club that walks around the neighborhood every morning using Moonwalk." And so we've definitely thought about how to access that older demographic and really not constrain ourselves as much as we love the core demographic of crypto users, not constrain ourselves just to be tailored around that. And so, we've really thought about the ways to do that. And like I said, we want to meet with more professional physicians and those sort of things to figure out how to really adjust like fitness goals based off of age and overall health. But we also want to make the application really approachable for those kind of users to use. I mean, I love my parents, but they would never be able to like follow the prompts on Moonwalk and be able to connect a crypto wallet and do all those complicated things that we do seamlessly. And they also don't want to participate in a probably 20-day game where you're hitting 10,000 steps a day. So there's got to be a balance somewhere, right? Where they can download this from the App Store, pay with Apple Pay, and without knowing it, they're doing an on and off ramp into like Solana USDC. And on top of that, it kind of goes into some of the more game dynamics that we talked about before, where say you're an elderly person, maybe you're 60, 70 plus, you could do a game and just click a pre-made game that we use based off of the group's average health metrics, where it's like, okay, each of you should hit 5,000 steps a day every other day, or like 3 times a week, instead of doing it like every single day, which is right now the core functionality.
Awesome. Well, I think we've covered a load of topics. As we've sort of been saying during the conversation, I think it's a really inspirational app. And thank God you're targeting crypto degens, because probably there's no group, that more requires to get outside and touch some grass. So really appreciate all the hard work you're doing. Get me into one of these games. I want to try it out. And good luck with everything in the future.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you guys having me on. I love being able to talk about it. I mean, it's something I'm super passionate about. And hopefully we can inspire people to really transform their lives via fitness. So love to have you participate in the game.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, thanks guys.